2013 objectives, and I'm not going to do all the talking because I do want Tom. He really is the driving force to help us accomplish a lot of things, ties us in with a lot of people. But our objectives was formalize the working group and the mission, which we did, identify areas of focus and the top priorities. That has been known, especially in the electric sector, for many years, but we're approaching this not just from the electric sector, but also from private sector, movement of fleet, and not the problems, but the issues that they deal with when they move from point A to point Z. This is, I always talk in short, mid, long term. We talk about, okay, what can we do today to get something done if something occurs tonight? What do we need to do to make this more sustainable? Is that partnerships and stuff? And then where do we want to be in the long run? What is the best approach? And we'll touch on that. We have to educate both the private and public sector. Many of us that have done presentations with our own groups or with a mix or just in the public, there's always a part of those presentations that deals with educating. So what we want to do is a continuous education process that I don't see as ever ending. Then exercises with states. One of the things that's coming up, New Jersey is having an exercise in February. A couple items that will be in that exercise is the fleet coordination conference call and also the U.S.-Canadian border crossing. Then produce initial products. Tom's going to talk about that. And we'll both talk about some of these. And then our partnerships with All Hazards Consortium's effort and our partners with New Jersey, Maryland, Pennsylvania, the other states, Kentucky. I can keep on going on. We've developed some great partnerships with like the I-95 Corridor Coalition, so real great benefit. Next slide, please. Just hit all these in, please. One of the things I do want to talk about is the stance that I believe, and I'm getting support from both private and public sector, but somehow we have to solidify this thought process. And is it the correct thought process is the first question we should be asking ourselves. And the second question is, how do we get everybody onto the same plateau or platform? One of the things that we believe is we've got to be safe. That, you know, in the electric sector, safety is priority one, both at work and at home. We have to be legal, and you know, sometimes we from the private sector don't understand the consequences of waivers to transportation. You know, such a good example is there's weight limits on certain bridges. If we're expecting to run trucks that are extremely overweight, what does that do to safety or the reliability of an overpass, something like that? So we have to have that mutual understanding of what we would like to see and how we can do things both in the short, mid, and long term that gives us to a sustainable process and also can work with keeping our public and our roads and everything else safe. So the first bullet here is what positions on these items that we're going to be discussing does government have, and what are the regulations, laws, and orders that they have to follow, and then what, you know, how does that conflict, or, and conflict's a strong word, how does that impede what we want? Then both the state and private sectors have to have these common goals, which we're seeing. We're seeing substantial coordination among both private, public, both state and federal in this effort. And I have to say, in my career, I've never seen this level of coordination among so many different sectors. Then our solutions to the options, they have to come from both the public and private. it's not just public solving the problems for private, that we have to work through these solutions also. Again, I'm throwing these out, and this is what I'm talking about, that I'd like to confirm that this is a solid approach. So what I do is break it down into, first of all, one of the things that we focus on a lot is catastrophic events, the Katrinas, the Hurricane Sandy, the derecho, those types of things. But we're moving resources all the time. And one of the things that we've been educating the public sector is if we can accomplish and be successful with these type of things such as holes, waves, trip and field permits during smaller events, they become a non-issue during catastrophic events. It's just more of it. So all these different issues, I believe there's 12 or 13 of these items we have documented. We look for documenting them, in the short term, is having that documentation of those items that do cause what type of problems, or you can call them choke points. Having lists of contacts who to work with to solve these. How do we do a notification process with our partners? And we're developing a pretty good partnership between public and private. We solved that. Well, we had some difficulties with the calls we had in December. We saw the partnership strengthen from those calls. How do we secure the information sharing? The information that we supply is somewhat an overview. If it's jurisdictional specific, the expectation is that the jurisdiction goes to that private sector that's within their state to get the specific information. But what we're doing is talking about an overview of generic information that is pretty reliable, probably 95% or greater in reliability, talking about movement of fleets, resource movements, what states they're going through, where they're going, by FTEs, and estimating trucks, departure times, arrival times on an estimated basis, but they're in the ballpark. And then sharing that information, that it stays operational, that we don't see it in a post-event investigation afterwards. Also, education and what options do we have? And an option I can talk about real quick is if you have commercial motor vehicles as intrastate vehicles, licensed as intrastate, do you have options beyond that? Can you apportion them as interstate? Can you apportion them as intrastate and have tax stickers, INTA stickers on the side so that they actually become interstate in a mutual assistance effort? So that's what I'm talking about, options. Midterm is coordinated sectors efforts, focus on those high impact, best practice, operations, normal operating practice. Started looking at those options that are normal operating practices and how we can kind of solidify that between the different utilities, especially in the electric sector. Working towards sustainability. And then constant understanding, utilizing best practice. This is becoming a national coordinated effort. Over December, we focused on the East Coast and the mid-central U.S., but we've already went out to the West Coast and talked on this subject. And then sustainability, so that what we do is our normal operating practice. I'm sorry, Tom, I talked too much. Go ahead. You want to talk to this next slide?
No, that'd be fine, John. I think just one comment on the solutions approach. With the big focus here on expediting power restoration and supply chain restoration, which would include food, fuel and food like that, this has been a really, I'd say, easy thing for states to support. With the private sector in the lead, the states can be asked for specific things that most of them want to help because it helps get the power on quicker. They really understand it. And the feedback that we've gotten from around the country, but specifically in the states on the East Coast, is that This is a good thing for them to kind of work together, and a lot of them are doing this already in the hurricane belt. But I think having the private sector organized the way it's been doing here takes a load off the states, and as long as the ask is clear and doable, and the states want to accommodate it. So it's really been interesting. As an example of that, following the last fleet movement call, we've had a number of states forward into us contact information for all of their DOT, emergency management, homeland security people. Every state's a little different, that can support those 5 questions the private sector was asking for, meaning how do we expedite quickly through your toll station, way station, your parkways and restricted roads? Do you have a declaration or not? And then are there any specific guidelines? So literally in less than a month, about 250 to 300 contacts have been provided to the fleet working group to support the development of where that could go downstream. So you don't see that happen very often with our states. They're all busy. They've got millions of things to do. So this I think is a good testament to when you integrate state and operators together, and I say state operators, people responsible for operations within the state, and they come to common agreement on, okay, we'll work on these 2 things, not these 20 things. They can get behind it and really support it. So I think that's really a testament to the states that have been part of this, working with the private sector and the trade associates. Everybody has really been an interesting thing to watch develop. One of the things the steering committee did was develop short, mid, and long-term specific objectives for 4 critical specific areas. So one of them is toll stations, there's way stations, there's information sharing, and I forgot the 4th one, John, but we'll get to it. Anyway, we don't have to read through all of these, but this is going to be in a document on the website. We'll talk about this on January 30, but a lot of work has been accomplished in this toll station area. We've worked very closely with Chris Eisenbray and Gail Royster at Edison Electric Institute, with Scott Smith and Jim Collins down at the Southeast Electric Exchange, Jim Nowak with American Electric Power, a number of utilities to piece this together along with the states. So it's a lot of words, but some of this stuff has already been done. But I think it is important that the working group communicate to the states and vice versa. You know, what is your short, midterm, and long-term objectives? Are they realistic? Are they doable? Are they operational? So this document's been developing during 2013, so we wanted to at least show you what those look like, and we'll talk about them more. There'll be a document pushed out for this. So. John, I'll turn it over to you. Any comments you have on either toll or way? The following slides will touch on the way stations and the permits. So.
Yeah, Tom. I do want, I don't know who's on the phone because I can't see who, but I'm going to be honest with you. In my previous career with another utility, I looked at the public and private. It's you and it's us, and we've heard this in many situations in our lifetime. And what my eyes have opened, that the people we are dealing with, both in the private and the public, my thoughts on the public had totally did a 180. And Tom had an opportunity to bring me into a call with the I-95 corridor coalition. And we talked about overlapping issues and where's the tolls going, and what they shared was long range or long term where they see the tolls going. They talked to us about their interactions with Florida. Basically, Easy Pass is going to be a whole East Coast thing. We talked about transponders, the needs or not the needs. How that counting, we actually, in fact, some of the items that they were working on, such as trip fuel and weight permits, and when I talk about weight permits, I'm not talking about the truck that is automatically oversized, overweight because it's a unique truck. I'm talking about an overweight vehicle as being a truck that's registered as interstate and legal in the state, But as soon as it goes across the state line, it becomes illegal because the weight regulations go down a little bit for interstate travel. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about overweight vehicles. But then you can go on, and here we are in the trip and fuel and weight permits, and we have, you know, when we talk about tolls, we have you know, Aaron Strickland from Southern Company. I can't name everybody from the electric sector. We have Meg from telecommunications, but Southern Company is testing a process with us. So you know, here, Aaron Strickland and Southern, it's legal. They stepped up to test the process, and we're going to be communicating the results of that to the whole group in the near future. But when we talk about the fuel, trip, and weight permits, again, there's an overlapping with the I-95 coalition, and we're starting to understand how people are registered. We're also going to look at the financial impact of what's the difference between registering as intrastate and intrastate, excluding the vehicle, because there has to be a vehicle design, and what's the long-term solution. So again, there's some options, other options that you can do now on certain vehicles that you can keep them stickered as intrastate, but actually make them legal without having to go out and get trip and fuel permits by having the ITA sticker on the side of the vehicle. There are utilities that do this already. Next slide. Oh, any comments to this, Tom?
Yeah, I think one of the things we're learning is that a lot of these solutions don't have to involve the state. What was needed was the understanding of the state process many times. So these are things private sector can solve quickly without really engaging a bunch of states unless they need to. So a lot of these short, medium, long-term goals, John, I think were private sector focused, and the states didn't really understand, well, why is that important? So we've had some interesting aha moments throughout 2013 where the education helped people understand why is this important, what's the process for these permits to be issued, what kind of declarations or what wording in declarations have impact, which ones don't. It's just been a real educational experience to watch this here. So, John, I'll move on to weigh stations, which I know is a tricky one and a big one here certainly. But on the screen now, for those you can't see, is the short, medium, long term. I'll have Jackie send out the document for this because this isn't a Word document. But the weigh station one is an important one, and we're looking at some interesting midterm solutions here. Using a way to secure information that can be passed along weigh station to weigh station to expedite utility fleet movement if and when needed. Again, we are working closely with IFTA and I-95 Corridor Coalition and others that have done great work in these areas already. And half the challenge is finding out what's already been done. So we try not to replicate. If we can find out something's already been done, we're going to copy it, steal it, borrow it, or with permission. Because why reinvent the wheel is kind of what we're looking at doing. So the weigh station one is that we've been talking about this, John, since January. I know we've had some movement on this, but I think this is going to be an important one in 2014.
Yeah, and you know, the weigh stations is one that is probably the biggest one that really slows us down other than toll. You know, the weigh stations, you think about pull in where your vehicles, but you think about what the purpose of the weigh station is. The weigh station is to make sure that the vehicles that are on the road meet a specific level of requirements that makes it safe for all the other people on the road. Now, is there a way for us to move our resources down that are legal without having to stop into the weigh stations? I think when you start talking about the PIV-I, the secure sharing of information, some different options we have there. Right now, one of the things, you know, in many cases, we look for the declarations from the state to do that. In other cases, we've made phone calls state to state to ask them how we're going to handle it. And, you know, states usually bend over backwards to help us get down the road because they know that even if they're a pass-through state today, they may be an impacted state tomorrow. And I think that's very important. So you know, what I'm starting to really see more and more as we work with all these groups is their position on it, the liability that's involved in certain things, the financial impact when you put a declaration out there. You know, how many times have we seen states hold off on a declaration until then? In other words, in some cases, we've seen states very proactive. So one of the things on this slide is there are solutions that keep us safe and legal, and we're pursuing them very aggressively. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I think, and under the short term here, we developed this fleet movement coordination call, which was thought of in the spring of 2013, documented during the summer, exercised in the fall, and was activated in the December ice storms in Texas. It was a bit clunky, but in the end, it engaged 18 states. Some of them went to the governor's office for declaration support to support fleet movement. I think it's safe to say the states all understood what was going on. We had a little confusion in some states that were concerned about sending resources out of their state to the Midwest when the storm was coming our way, kind of thing. So they worked through that. But clearly, the short-term goal is well underway, and that's going to be a big service the Fleet Working Group is going to look at, is this whole regional fleet movement coordination call. That call involves getting multiple states on the phone. It involves sharing fleet movement data with them that is secured, if you will, that it can be protected for just operators to be looking at, so it doesn't go viral, if you will. And that involves the RMAGs, that involves the alerting the federal groups that are involved, so they're coordinated with. So there's a lot more work to be done with this. But I think overall that short-term goal, John, was quite effective, and the feedback we got from the states was very positive. And some states really jumped in. Maryland did a wonderful job at getting pretty much everybody needed to be involved in that. Even though they were a sending state, they were very much involved and have been very supportive, and I think have a big interest in this. There were other states, and I just picked Maryland, top jumped off my head. Georgia was another one. North Carolina was another one. They were very, very engaged. So anyway, that's the way station one. So let's go to our next one here.
Hey, Tom, let me kind of add to that. You know, what came out of our December conference calls? Well, you know, we came out of there with some different thought processes to pursue. First of all, our technology on our conference call caused us some issues, and the All Hazards Consortium Fleet Movement Working Group is working on solving that issue. We're actually using that same system today, and we're having sort of the same problems with the muting and unmuting on this system. That's going to go away. You know, the next thing is what came out of that call is we heard routine information, which we knew we would hear. What we did, you heard Tom go out and say he made, after those calls, he ended up with 250 contacts answering those 5 questions. We're not, our questions are exceptions. Or what we're going to be talking about are exceptions to the standard practice. Kentucky, during those calls, actually activated a level of their, whether they call it EOC or FEOC, I'm not sure what the correct term is, but they actually activated that for resources to move through their state. And asked us on one of the calls, well, do you want us to stay active or pursue? What I saw more than the information, that while the information was important, what I saw more that came out of those calls was the willingness for the private to tell state by state what the resource movement was, the estimated time of departure or arrival to the best of our abilities, limiting this to maybe 1 call or 2 calls with electronic updates after that. So the purpose of these calls is not to impact our other calls. It's to assist us, whether it's the RMEGs, the Regional Mutual Assistance Groups, the EEI, FEE, the Western Energy Institute, whoever it is, to assist us in getting these resources up and down. Go ahead, Tom.
Good. Just a time check, John. We're at 9:32 at the moment. So our areas of focus have been kind of the North Star that the steering committee has put together. Now, this is there's a lot on this page, and I think it's safe to say that we haven't seen movement on every one of these, but I think every one of these areas have been touched by a few of the things that have happened. Specifically, I just wanted to highlight, it was not well known, but this group, through John Shaner and several others, had put a process in place for the border crossing between U.S. and Canada that significantly reduced the wait time for crews coming from Canada into U.S. and back. John, I forget the numbers, but it was pretty impressive. It was an hour down to 10 minutes, or something like that. It was quite an impressive process. We learned early on that not enough people know about that process. So our challenge this year was to make sure that process gets out into Department of Energy and other groups that are using that use the borders as well as the states. But we put this slide together to show people, hey, what are you guys working on? So there's a broad agenda here, but some of the products we produced have touched half of these. But anyway, this is to answer that question. So what's your focus? What are the areas you're touching on?
And so that you know, the U.S. border crossing, the U.S.-Canadian border crossing, it went actually from anywhere of 2 hours per truck down to, if we followed the manifest spreadsheet and the notification, down to 20 seconds per truck. During the last storm, we did have an issue. Tomorrow, we actually have a very small, with the right people, conference call with the U.S. Customs, DOE, and a retired DHS. Now Tom mentioned something, and I'm going to correct him on it, and I'm going to do it on the 30th. John Shaner is only a representative for many, many other people, basically directing, telling, and assisting. So I'm just a point right now, but John Shaner is going away, and what we want to do is make sure we have a process in place that the private sector has a way of this continuing, and also the public sector through the all hazards reporting. So, but many of these items we've been working on. Go ahead, Tom. I know.
Okay, that's all right. So the next slide, it talks about products produced. Originally, there were 6 products that were designed to be produced. Certainly a charter. That charter was a joint document by initially the states of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, who were the pilot states. Any state can become part of that. But that was produced in about 6 weeks. There's a website that's been up. We produced a guidebook report for the EasyPass commercial accounts. That was really not to teach people in the EasyPass region how to use EasyPass, because most of them kind of know about that. But it's really the people out of region coming into this region of EasyPass, which is about 15 states, 15, 16 states now, down to North Carolina, I think is as far south as it goes. And we're testing that now, of how to expedite, in an emergency, how to expedite using EasyPass, how to expedite through the region if you're not an EasyPass customer. There was another website put together. It was kind of a data services website. It was basically compiling state data for the private sector. That was used during the CADEX exercises, and that's been completed. We conducted some educational webinars in July where we got states and operators together talking about the mutual aid system, how it works, Power 101. We talked about the trickling effects of power, cascading impacts of power outages with New York City and the New Jersey urban areas. Very, very good. All that stuff's been recorded and is on the website. I mentioned the expediting of the U.S.-Canada border crossing. John, I didn't know it was 2 hours to 20 seconds. That's pretty impressive. I didn't realize it was that quick. I mentioned the EasyPass pilot. We conducted the fall CADEX exercise together with the states of FEMA Region 3, which is basically Maryland, D.C., Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia. Participating, we had a number of other states observing, and now they're starting to plan CADEX 2014. the two that were not originally identified as products to be produced emerged as part of the planning during CADEX, and one of them I mentioned was this fleet movement coordination call. Not only that it emerged, that it was actually utilized in action and is being refined now. So that has become a very effective private sector-driven process. States are supporting it. It helps to expedite power restoration via fleet movement, as well as supply chain restoration. That impacts everybody, not just the electric sector, but, as I said, food and fuel and supplies and medical and so forth. And then the other one that emerged during that is this whole how do we secure this information without having everybody to change to a new type of format or whatever. So out of that came our connections through the Defense Industrial Base, who has been using an identity, a secured identity method of sharing information, which has now come standard in Microsoft products for digital signature, encrypting files, or encrypting entire emails. This is a card that basically is a federally approved process to validate. The states use it, the feds use it, and the private sector can gain access to it. It's called PIVI, Personal Identity Verification Interoperable. It's a very effective, low-cost way to reduce your cybersecurity threats by about 50%, according to DoD. But it allows people to share information, whether they're on Gmail or Outlook or whatever. You can attach a file, you can seal it with a PIVI credential, and only folks can open it. The only folks can open it have a PIVI credential. So this emerged as a best practice in the Defense Industrial Base, and we have partnered with TSCP, the Trans-Global Secure Collaboration Program, that has over 15 million users of this worldwide for all the military programs from Joint Strike Wing fighters to whatever. And it's a very effective, proven, federally approved process to share information. So we're going to be exploring that more and more this year as a way to secure some access to some of the information being shared with us through our data sharing partners, which are growing. So we set out to produce 6 products. We produced 6 plus 2 that are in the hopper. So I think it was a very productive year for the working group. And again, it's not just any individual. There's been hundreds of people involved in this process, as well as organizations, for a common mission of how do we expedite power and supply chain restoration. And that is really the North Star that brings everyone together. So none of this would have happened without an army of people wanting to help, and they've already done some of the pieces. And so the working group's job is to kind of capture it and glue it together into an operational product and develop that together with states. Next slide looked at partnerships that were developed. John, I'm sorry, do you have a comment?
Yeah, before you, and don't need to go back to the slide, but the PIVI, give you a good example of the coordination. Virginia and Dominion were interacting with the PIVI program, basically giving 4 or 5 different people within the Dominion organization access to information. And what we've done through the All Hazard Consortium Fleet Movement Working Group is brought that in coordination with this, and we're learning a lot from both Virginia and Dominion on that process. So Tom brings up an excellent point. One of the big things about this project is we're really focused on specific things, but there's a lot of groups that are doing things that can help us get to the final product without duplicating, and there's a good example. I'm sorry, Tom.
So on the partnership front, I think we have been very fortunate in that there's a lot of people have been working this electric issue. So I think the success of this effort, it's been extremely focused, and it touches a nerve that everybody's wrestling with, is how do we get the power on quicker? And that's the rising tide that's raising all ships. And so as a result of that, we have picked up partners. And let me define a partner. It's actually somebody that has something that can be utilized. It's not a logo on a website. It's not joining forces to maybe do something someday. So everybody on this list has something that they want to bring to the party, which is really, really interesting, and it leverages the resources needed to make it happen. So certainly the I-95 Corridor Coalition has been at this a long time. They've been at this 20-some years and have done tons of things that they were really anxious to share with the private sector. And we'll be developing that throughout 2014. And the I-95 Corridor Coalition, if you're not familiar with them, they cover from Maine to Florida. And it's state-centric, it's DOT-centric, so it's transportation-focused, but they cover a lot of ground and have done a lot of great work that they're going to share with the Fleet Working Group. I won't go through all of these, but we've had meetings with every one of the folks at the federal level. Probably U.S. Department of Energy has some of the biggest interest in this, along with FEMA. And we're looking to sustain dialogue with them on data sharing, on research, on some product development possibly that could be done, joint exercises. There's a lot of really good activity going on there. And again, it's just refocusing energies and resources so that we can pick one thing that both the Fed, states, and operators can look at, focus on, invest in, and coordinate on, so it can actually get produced quickly. So these partnerships are key to the Fleet Working Group because the partnerships do a lot of the heavy lifting on some of these topics. So, John, any comments on that before we go on?
Yeah, the big thing is, remember, the Fleet Working Group is made up of state, private sector, and I don't want to exclude anybody, but there's other people involved. So you don't see states on this list. You don't see private sector on this list. This is in addition to that working group.
Yeah, thank you, John. Good point. Good point. Just as a way of looking at synergies, there are many. We could have had a 3-hour webinar on this, but we listed out here some of the things that on this chart the Fleet Working Group was working on, and some of the things the I-95 Corridor Coalition, for example, has already been funded to do. I won't go through all of these, but they have done lots of work in the truck parking arena. And they are actually working on a project now, for example, that will allow them to monitor the status of the parking lots along the East Coast for available slots, resources. It was pretty impressive what they were looking to do on that project. So we're going to be talking with them about how to leverage that information into the Fleet Working Group and other data that they produced as a result of their federally funded projects. And they were, I think it's safe to say, John, they were more than interested in partnering with the private sector here on these types of initiatives. They can put to use what they have developed as far as their federal programs. Yep. Coming into the last couple slides, some data partnerships have been very effective. Certainly the states of the All Hazards Consortium are working on 2 nationwide databases which have been complete. The third one is almost complete. The first 2 were really is, where are all the electronic toll collection systems in the country? So that database was finished and completed mid-year last year and was put up on a website that was utilized during CADEX, and they're going to finalize that here in 2014. Second database was a database of all state transportation-related information, hundreds of thousands of records, websites, things like that that are going to be utilized. And what those are is kind of a one-stop shop the Fleet Working Group website can provide for operators to say, okay, I go to this one place and I can learn about and be linked to all the state-specific websites that support way stations and toll stations and so forth. The second one is our relationship with Hughes Network Systems. Hughes Satellite, by another name, runs about 2 to 3 million point-of-sale systems throughout the country, primarily in the fast food, convenience store, hotel, motel, retail, big box, and pharmacy. And during Sandy, they shared their open and closed information, a really up and down satellite link with the states through the consortium. And that became very critical in the first few hours of responding to Sandy to learn where the power was out and where there might be food or fuel. It's simple red and green dots on a map. we've been working with legal to finalize this agreement. I think we are within a couple of weeks finally to have that available, that data open. And what that will be is a website that operators in states will be able to go to once approved and visually look at, not download yet, but look at this national database, if you will, of open and closed hotel, food, pharmacy, where there's a list of all the stores they cover. It's about 70% of the market for most of it in the urban areas. Tremendous first data set, and so Hughes has been a big partner in this, and it's just taken longer than we expected. The third data partner is even more prolific than Hughes. We've been working with the Financial Services, ISAC, I think it's Information Sharing Advisory Committee. The Financial Services ISAC is represented by all the banking institutions, financial institutions, and during Sandy, they provided us millions of credit card transactions from any place that used a credit card machine. Well, that gave us a much finer, more granular data layer, if you will, to help find open and closed, if you will, food, retail stores, and even broader than the Hughes data. We're going to be, in 2014, we're going to be integrating their data into our data providers so that we'll be able to look at a national picture based on credit card transactions from anywhere. So that does two things. One, it can also tell us red and green is it open or closed, but government could use this because that, when people are buying things, there's economic activity there. So that can also provide information on where is the data coming from, what's the activity there. There's a lot of information the folks monitor through this credit card activity. So that's a new data partnership we're very excited about. That will provide millions and millions of credit card records on demand around the country. So we're very pleased about that. And again, that wouldn't have happened if we did not have the operators in the states working together like we did. And then, of course, the last data set is really coming from the private sector on the fleet movement data. This data is coming, this slide is incorrect, by the way. This data was tested during the Texas ice storms in 2013, and it's coming from the private sector on the information about how many people, who are the pass-through states, what's the ETAs, sensitive data that we want to make sure we use for operational purposes only. And there will be many other data partners, I think, once this goes live. But again, we're trying to build data partnerships that are built on trust, and they want us to secure the data. And so that's why we're moving to some kind of universal standard that all states could use, and all feds could use, and all companies could use, that is pretty heavy duty as far as security goes from a PIV identity management, but allows everybody to keep their portals and keep their logons and passwords. And so we're very pleased about that, and this will grow, I think, over time. So the data is important because if we're going to resolve operational issues, you've got to have information to make decisions. And this information has been proven during Sandy. We think it'll be relevant going forward. So, John, you want to provide any comments about our data partnerships?
I was going to wait until the next steps, but let me just say this. Imagine that, remember that chart long-term, sustainability, normal operating process. Imagine being able to go to your iPhone and say, okay, I'm taking trucks from point A to point Z. Show me where power is out along, what is the most effective route. Show me the last gas station. What type of fuel is at that? Is it capable to handle commercial motor vehicles? Where's the last hotel that I can spend the night and the hotel has power? That type of information at a glance. I'm a strict believer, and I'm not the smartest person in the world, and you'll hear this on the 30th, as I say it all the time. I want to be able to look at something that gives me information at a glance, situational awareness. I learned that in system operations. It's vital for all of us, whether private or public, to be able to recognize what we need to know as fast as possible and for it to be correct. Think of this type of fleet movement data being in that format, and that is very much possible. I'm starting to get excited, Tom. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So our last slide is talking about our next steps. This slide is incorrect here. Sorry, it's January 30 is our date for the annual Fleet Working Group meeting. This will be our third meeting. It'll be in Philadelphia at the same location we were last year. Invitations are out if you'd like. If you don't have one, just send us a note. And it's at that meeting we'll be providing two things. One, kind of a more in-depth review of 2013. We're going to have a panel that's going to focus on the public and private impacts of fleet movement, what we learned during 2013 from a policy, procedure, information, security perspective. And then in the afternoon, or late morning, early afternoon, we're going to have a tabletop that's going to build upon the recent storms, ice storm, snowstorm, and things, why the call was convened, why it was not, and getting input from the audience on some ways to refine that process. Should be a very productive day. That's January 30. CADEX 2014 exercises and drills are being scheduled. What we learned during CADEX 2013 was that getting 6 states together to coordinate is a huge lift. And CADEX 2014 may look at, it's going to expand even more states, so we'll have 9 states involved with CADEX 2014. But I think what we're going to look at, and we're going to discuss this with the states, we're going to look at taking CADEX private sector drills and exercise, like tabletop exercises, scale them down so they can become part of any state or federal or a private sector exercise. So rather than creating another big exercise, let's create modules that can be incorporated into the National Guard exercises, the Maryland or the District of Columbia or New Jersey exercises, FEMA or DOE exercises, so that there's a common component of the fleet movement issue being done consistently with these different groups. That seems to be the best recommendations by the states, and I think it's a great idea. So CADEX 2014 is going to be, it's under planning now, and there'll be a planning meeting for that with the states and the folks involved here the day after the annual meeting. Next is product enhancements. We are going to finalize and launch officially the website and services with that, probably first quarter. And the fleet movement coordination call, we're talking now about drilling into those processes on how do we convene it, why do we convene it, what are the triggers that convene it. This is really a private sector effort. We're getting input from the states on this as well. And then lastly, we'll be looking at our sustainability strategy. Not just the sustainability of the working group, which I think is going to be addressed, but also sustaining the data sharing piece of this. And I think there's a lot of potential to that, and we want to make sure that we do it and stay focused on the mission of the fleet working group, which is to expedite fleet movement, of course. And so we'll have a discussion and finalize our sustainability strategy going forward so we can communicate that out to government and private sector organizations, not just in the electric sector, but in the 8 or 9 other sectors that have an interest and play a role in the fleet working group, like telecommunications, finance, food, retail, water, and so forth. So, John, any comments on kind of our next steps?
No, the only statement I have is on the 30th, the panel discussion. You know, when Tom, me, Dennis Schrader, Jackie, we're putting this together. We've been working a lot of hours on this and want to make it very beneficial for the people that are attending. For some people, the morning session will have a conference line. We would like to see people there, but there are those people that have travel restrictions that still may want to hear the update and the panel discussion. What really excites me about the 30th is I've been involved in a lot of panel discussions, and it's usually you bring up the private sector, set them down, and you ask them questions, and then you bring up the public sector, set them down, and you ask them questions. We've really created a panel where we have, on the private sector, quite a mixture from associations, operator to executive type perspectives that you're going to hear answers. And then on the public sector, we're going to have back and forth interaction. So there's going to be one panel with some substantial knowledgeable, not that the audience isn't as knowledgeable, it's just that we had the opportunity to work with a lot of these people and grab them real fast and put them on the panel. So I'm really looking forward to that. So it's something, if you're attending the meeting, I hope that turns out well. Okay, Dawn.
Okay. John, I think that concludes our webinar for today. If you have any thoughts or comments, please send us an email. And we did record this, so we'll make this available as needed for folks that would like to share this with others or what have you. And then lastly, I think reminders will be going out for the January 30 meeting. If you have not registered for that, please do. We have limited seating to 100 on that. And we want to make sure you folks that are members of the Fleet Working Group get a chance to register before it fills up. So, John, I'll turn it over to you for closing comments.
Well, you heard what we're trying to do. You see that we have a mission, a scope, what we've done in 2013. We openly talk about the problems we've had with some of the items. I hope we've demonstrated that we just don't have a problem, that we follow up and pursue that. We love comments from both public and private sector on what we're doing. We want criticism, you know, pats on the back. Hey, if that's something you like, that's fine. But what makes this work is your criticism or your comments that help us better develop it. So on that note, unless there's something else, Tom, I'd like to, I guess there was a lot of fog on the East Coast this morning. Everybody have a safe day and look forward to seeing you or talking to you in the near future. Thank you.